Hello, happy Bookmas Day 372, something like that, I feel like. Today, we are gonna have hair stuck in our mouth. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to tell you about the books that I read in the month of November, of which there are few. I need to shut that window, don't I? I feel like I can divide November into two very distinct halves. Part 1 of November was solely focused on slogging through Iron Flame. And then part 2 of November was preparing and starting the process of getting ready for Bookmas. So within that, there was very little time for actually reading, but I did manage to finish 7 books in the month of November. So that's not terrible for how little I feel like I read. That's really not that bad. And within that, I had some incredible reads. So let's talk about them. First, let's start with the elephant in the room. I reread Iron Flame and then I read, nope. This is going great already. I have an hour-long spoiler-filled reading vlog for these. So if you want my full honest spoilery thoughts, I will link that below somewhere, wherever people link things. But I will just briefly tell you my ratings for 2 seconds and then we're gonna move on. Because I feel like I spent the entire month of November talking about these books and I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't. So we reread Fourth Wing. I wanted to validate my feelings on it the first time. The first time I read this, I gave it 5 stars. I wanted to see if I was blinded by that hype or if I actually did enjoy it as much as I thought I did. And I really did feel that it was a 5-star read. Overall, I enjoyed this just as much as I did the first time. I think that I felt slightly less giddy than I did the first time, which is expected because it is a reread. So of course it's always more exciting, more shocking the first time you read something. The second time I think I was a little bit more skeptical and a little bit more critical. Because of that, I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars on my second read. I still think that this is a flawed book in a lot of ways, but despite the flaws, I truly do love it and I truly do love this series. That's just how I feel. Okay? I'm not going to defend myself. It's just how I feel. Iron Flame, on the other hand, this was the most difficult book I have had to read this year, which is saying something. This was just tedious to get through. The first half of the book, I swear to God, I almost DNF'd it like 4 times. I was so bored. I was struggling, slogging my way through it. However, the second half totally redeemed it for me. I had the best time with the last, I'd say 250 pages of it. I had so much fun. The saving grace overall, of course, was my sweet Zayden. I'm sorry. I am a simp for him. I just am. Okay? His overprotective, broody, toxic masculinity, it works for me. And I'm not going to apologize about it, okay? He is a sweet little muffin that I will protect with my entire heart. So I ended up giving this a 3 stars. It broke my heart to say, but I had to acknowledge the fact that the first half of this book would have been basically a 1 star if I really truly had been honest with myself. But then the second half of this book would have been a 5 star. So I gave it an average 3 star. That's it. That's fine. I am going to continue in this series. I am going to reread this in the future, but I am so glad it's over. I am so glad it's over. And that is enough of that. I don't want to talk about this series again until the next book comes out, okay? If you want more thoughts, go look at that vlog. She's a long one. Now let's talk about some books that have nothing to do with Fourth Wing. I read the book Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison, and this was so good. I truly think that every book she writes gets better and better. This is a horror novel that follows our character Vesper. Vesper has left her family behind to have a new life for herself. She's a waitress living on her own. She left behind this family because they are in a satanic cult. They call themselves something like Hell's Gate, and they basically worship the devil. She grew up in this cult. Her mother is a famous actress in the horror genre, and Vesper never really understood or agreed with the overly religious, overzealous people around her that were obsessed with being in this cult. So as soon as she could, she got out. However, in the very beginning of this book, she receives in the mail an invitation to a wedding of her cousin and her ex-boyfriend. She decides to make the trip back to New Jersey despite her better judgment, and when she gets there, she has to deal with her mother and with her ex-boyfriend, who's now getting married to her best friend slash cousin, and all of the fallout from her having left the family behind. It was so good. It was just, the writing was just so excellent that I ate up every single second of this. I just had such a fun time being in Vesper's head and her trying to wrap her head around why the people around her act the way they do, why they think it's okay to act the way they do, and then what does it mean for her, and has she really left behind all of these thoughts, emotions, feelings, or did she take them with her? Obviously, because it's a horror, it gets darker and darker from there. It was so good. I had such a good time with this. I am going to give this a 4.5. This is like almost a perfect book for me. Almost. Just shy of. I also read One Dark Window in November, and I loved this. I really did love this. I started hearing more about it recently, I think because the second book came out, so people started talking about it again, and I was intrigued. I was intrigued. This is a gothic fantasy. In this world, there is this plague called Blunder. It's like this plague of dark magic. It's very dangerous, and anyone who is affected by it is basically put to death. There's also this whole magic system that's based around these like basically playing cards or tarot cards sort of. Each one provides the user with these special abilities. So there's some that make them super good at fighting. There's some that make them be able to read each other's thoughts. Some that make them like basically the most beautiful person in the world so they can fall in love. It is definitely gothic and dark, not in like a creepy way, just like it's a very like dark gothic feeling world that you're in. There's a lot of like sneaking around and deception and lies, and it's so good. It's so good. Raven is amazing. I love him. They're so bantery, the two of them. And the ending, I seriously could not believe when it ended. I was like, wait, that's it? What do you mean that's it? What do you mean that's it? So I immediately need to pick up the next book. I ended up purchasing it, and I hope to get to it this month because I feel like the book just ended and I need to know what's going to happen next. Overall, I really enjoyed this. I think I would give it a 4-star. It's not like my favorite book of the year by any means, but I had a really good time reading it, and it reminded me how much fun a fun, simple, basic gothic fantasy can be. Next up, we have a book that has easily been added to my favorite books of the year list. And I am just as shocked as you are. This book was not on my radar in any way, shape, or form, but because I am so easily influenced by other people, I saw one person rave about this book, and I knew that I had to pick it up immediately. And literally, I dropped everything else to read it. And I have no regrets. This book right here is the sickest, most twisted, disturbing book that I think I've ever read. And I loved it. I loved it. I ate up every single second of it. It is the most absurd thing that I can't even fathom the mind that came up with this. Like I can't even imagine. CJ Lead is a sick and twisted, stunning, gorgeous human being. And I need to understand how she could even fathom half of the things that she put into this book. I don't know how to describe this book to you because I went in completely blind, and I honestly really truly recommend that. If I had known anything about it, I think it would have taken away from the experience. So I really don't want to tell you too much. So I will just tell you the very, very bare bones of this book. Before I do, look at this cover, okay? Look at this cover. And while I'm telling you the premise of this book, I need you to look at this cover. So this book follows our character, Mave. Mave works at Disneyland. It's not explicitly stated in the book, but it's Disneyland. And she works as a character from Frozen. She works at Disneyland as Elsa from Frozen. Now look at this cover again. Did you ever think that those two things would go together? So she's working at Disneyland. She is living with her grandmother who has not very long left to live. But then behind closed doors, Mave has some habits, characteristics, tendencies, feelings, emotions that are a little bit dark and twisted and horrific. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I am going to tell you. It's about this girl Mave and her brain and the things that she does. And that's it. That's all I can tell you. Let's be honest with ourselves. I read this because of Katie Coulson, and her elevator pitch of this book is, it is American Psycho for the girlies, and that is 100% the perfect way to describe this book. If you are willing to read an extreme horror and to go down this rabbit hole, I could not recommend this book enough. But you need to be very sure that you're ready to handle it, that you're willing to handle it, because ooh, is it disturbing in so many ways. But I'm obsessed. Obsessed. 5 stars. It's going on my favorite books of the year list. Obsessed. Okay? Obsessed. Pick it up. If you're not squeamish, if you're ready to be disturbed, pick this up now. Do it. I promise you, you will not regret it. Unless you do, in which case I am so sorry, and send me your therapist bills because I'm sorry. Let's go back to something that is sweet and swoony. Powerless. I finally read Powerless. I think this has been on 2 or 3 TBRs for the past few months, and I finally did it. I had to know what the hype was, and I get it. Guys, I get it. This is a young adult fantasy. We follow our character Peyton Gray, as well as a character named Kai, and first of all, the tropes and the banter between the two of them make this book like, oh my god. The best way that I can explain this book is a cross between Hunger Games, Red Rising, Throne of Glass, Goblet of Fire, and like every other tropey fantasy young adult book that you've read in your life. This is like a combination of all of that in the best way. So we have our character Peyton. She is an ordinary. Ordinaries have no magical abilities. And then there are elites, and the elites have magical abilities. Then we have Kai, and Kai is the king's son, but he is also the enforcer. He is the leader of the army, and he is the person that is basically in charge of tracking down the ordinaries and putting them to death for the king. Then we have these trials that they put on every year, and this is where the like Hunger Games elements comes into play. It very much is similar to that. They basically draw names, and most of the people that are chosen are elites, although some of them are mundanes who also have magical abilities, but like lesser so. And they all compete in these trials against each other, and it's very possible that you could die in these trials. In fact, it's sort of encouraged. And of course, Peyton gets chosen for the trials, and so does Kai. There's balls, there's deaths, there's secret rebellions. There are so many elements of this that felt so reminiscent of some of my favorite books of all time. And so because of that, I absolutely ate it up. The relationship between Peyton and Kai is just so charming. Kai is literally one of those men who is supposed to be this big, bad, brutal soldier, but at the end of the day, he is just a soft angel boy that I love to death. He will do anything to protect Peyton. He will do anything to look out for her, and she can't trust him because he doesn't know that she's an ordinary, that she has no magic, and if he did know, he would kill her. It just was like the best of all of my favorite worlds combined. I loved it. 5 stars. 5 stars. I get the hype. I cannot wait for the next book. I will literally die to get my hands on it because the ending, ooh, the final line just like, it was perfect. It was perfect. 5 stars. And the final book that I read in the month of November is Hopeless. This is the final book. It hurts me to say that. It really does. This is the final book in the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver. This series has taken the romance world by storm. It has made me a cowboy romance fan. Never in my life did I think that this New York City girl was gonna be that. And this series changed me. For real. Like, for real. I will pick up any book that Elsie Silver writes forever because I swear to God, the relationships that she creates are just amazing. Incredible. You eat them up. Every single book, you can't help but root for the characters, and every single book feels so unique and so different and so special. Every character is so well developed. I'm obsessed. This one right here, book 5, this one in particular, this may be my favorite book of the series. I cannot believe I'm saying that because for the longest time, book 2, that was my favorite book of the series. And I thought nothing would ever beat it until this. This was so good. So good. Oh, in this book we follow Bo. Bo is a ex-Army Ranger. Was it Army Rangers? I don't know. He's a military man. He's a military man who had a very traumatic incident happen when he was overseas, and so he is now home recovering from that both mentally and physically. He's going through it. He's going through it. He doesn't really know what direction his life is headed now because his entire life he was just a military man, and now he has to sort of find a new purpose, find a new goal, find a new personality. He's definitely struggling. He's struggling with PTSD. He's struggling with physical ailments, and he's struggling with finding his purpose again. And then we have our main character, Bailey. She lives just over the little river that passes between the properties with her brothers and her father, and they are basically like the town lepers. Everybody hates them, and it's because her brothers and her father are absolutely the worst humans in the world. But because of them, because of her terrible, terrible family and her terrible, terrible, sad, tragic upbringing, the entire town pretty much ostracizes her, even though she has nothing to do with her brothers and her father, and she is not like them in any way, shape, or form. She's sweet, she's kind, she's motivated, she wants to do better, she wants to get out of this town to go somewhere where she can find people that actually are kind to her. The entire town is just awful to Bailey. I mean, awful. Like, it's despicable. It was very hard to read, actually, because I hate bullying and I hate things, anything like that, where you make somebody feel badly about themselves. It just is like really, really hard for me to read about. Basically, at the beginning of the book, she is a bartender. Bo ends up going into her bar and getting drunk because he doesn't understand how to deal with all of these big feelings that he's having. And they end up developing a bit of a friendship. He is very protective over her. He sees the way that the rest of the town treats her, and it bothers him to no end. She's very worried for him because of all of the things that he's going through, and they start this little friendship, and then it turns into a fake engagement deal. They are going to pretend to be engaged so that Bailey can find a job and have people look at her in a new light because she's associated with Bo, who's like the town hero. And Bo wants his family to get off of his back because they are so worried about him and they are walking on eggshells around him, and he just wants them to know that he's okay. So they're going to use each other, and obviously very quickly it becomes more real than either of them thought it would be, and they're so cute together. They're so cute together. And the other thing I will say about these books, I am not one for the steamier scenes. Most of the time, I skip right past them. They're boring. They're a little gross in most romance books. However, the way Elsie Silver writes her sexy times, I don't know why, but I eat it up. I eat it up. She does such a phenomenal job making it intense and steamy without it being like too much information, if that makes any sense. I just like it. I like the way she writes her scenes. I like the way she writes her characters. I love this world. At the end of this book, we are introduced to the main character that's going to start out the next series that she's writing. So it's within this world. It's just not going to be specifically surrounding these characters. It's going to be another group of characters sort of connected to them. I think it's called Wild Love. I can't wait. I will literally pick up anything she writes forever. If it wasn't clear already, 5 stars. 5 stars. Probably going on a favorite books of the year list. Took me so by surprise. 5 freaking stars. And that is everything that I read in the month of November. All 7 books. I know it's definitely a smaller quantity, but the quality of what I read in November was top tier. I got 3 5-star books, 3 4-star books, and a 3-star. That's not bad. That is the end of this video. If you have read any of these books, I would love to know what you thought of them. If you agree with me, disagree with me. Also, I would love to know what your favorite book of November was. And leave an engagement ring if you made it this far into the video in honor of Hopeless, the final Chestnut Springs. Guys, I'm gonna need a minute, okay? I'm just kidding. Although I'm not gonna lie to you, totally cried at the end of this. I didn't even mention that, but I totally did. Totally did. I'm not ashamed. It happened. What happened, happened. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. As always, I love you all so much, and I will see you in another video very soon. Hopefully. Bye.